Hello, so I'm finally going to do a video on something that people have been requesting me to do for ages. It's an ECBA, so this is the Enhanced Body Armour system, or Enhanced Combat Body Armour system that the British Army used for quite a long time. It's only recently being retired from service as far as I'm aware, because it was one of those things that even when it was retired from frontline troops, lots and lots of soldiers in sort of rear echelon positions had it, just because it fit certain roles very well, where the heavier, bigger armour systems didn't do so well. So what I'll do is later on in the video I'll get some of the other armours out to demonstrate how they were different. The only annoying thing is there's not much info on the ECBAs online. Like, you can find forums where soldiers argue if they were good or not. You can find stuff about the Osprey stuff and all the other stuff that replaced them, but weirdly you can't find all that much information about the ECBA armour itself. So as I said, this stands for Enhanced Combat Body Armour. Now, you'll have to bear with me in this video, because obviously a lot of the information I present may be wrong. I'm trying to present this as factually as I can, but as I said, because there's not so many sources you can go on, if something's quite biased, then, or whatever, wrong, I'm not going to get it right. So, as far as I understand, this is sort of a third generation of British body armour. So, in the sort of Irish Troubles, or Irish War, whatever you want to call it, in the sort of 70s, the Troubles is generally the name most people call it over here, Britain started using pretty much a copy of the American flak jacket, which was called the Mark I fragmentation vest, the ones that are pretty famous from the Vietnam War. I have one of those, so I'll show that a bit later in the video. And that was good, because obviously fragmentation vests, although they're only designed to stop fragmentation, and if you're lucky they might stop a pistol round, obviously they're not going to do much against rifles or, things like that. But obviously they increase survivability a lot, because if bombs or grenades go off, they protect the wearer from shrapnel. This was actually before Kevlar was invented, or at least before Kevlar was being used for sort of military and police applications. So the vest had what was called a ballistic nylon layer inside. Ballistic nylon is not as good as Kevlar. Obviously it was better than what came before that, but, Kevlar basically superseded it, because thinner Kevlar offered better protection than ballistic nylon. If you consider it like Kevlar Gen 0, then that's kind of what ballistic nylon was. The issue was that the first generation of fragmentation vests were very bulky, and I'll get mine out and show you in a minute so you can see. So what they then did was, I think, what they called the improved Northern Ireland armour, or the fragmentation vest Mark II. And that ends up looking a lot more similar to the ECBA. Basically, if I just point out to you on the ECBA, it was the same sort of olive drab green as the first generation of armour, but it had a more slimline filler. It didn't have a collar, just like the ECBA doesn't have a collar. It didn't have as much space around the arms like the ECBA doesn't have. But most importantly, it had a plate carrier section on the front for an armoured plate. And that was obviously to give you much better protection from shrapnel and even rifle fire on the front of the armour. So that's where I'm pretty certain, from what I've researched, the ECBA has come from. The ECBA was basically just an updated version of the Northern Ireland Mark II armour, or Mark II fragmentation vest, whatever you want to call them. So what I'm going to do now is just get out the Mark I fragmentation vest and put that to the side, just so you can see what a vast improvement this was over the old flak jackets. Right, so hopefully you can see both of those in frame. On the left I have the first generation of body armour. It's called 1979 pattern, although they had this earlier than 1979 as far as I'm aware. But as far as I'm aware, this was basically the Mark I fragmentation vest. As far as I'm aware, that's the name it was actually called. But as you can see, bulkier collar on this. It had the bits on that made it easier to shoulder a rifle. But overall it's bulky. Now if I just feel them physically from the weight, I think the ECBA is actually lighter even with the rifle plates in, so that gives you some idea of the improvements Kevlar makes over ballistic nylon. But what I can show you is, if I turn the vest to the side, you should get an idea now just how different, like thin Kevlar is compared to ballistic nylon, and this will actually give you better protection. So that gives you an idea of, just how armour had improved over the years if you see them side by side like that. Obviously, one of the main advantages was cutting off the collar. As much as that protects your neck from shrapnel, obviously it makes it harder to look around and things like that properly. And overall it was just, making something slimmer. Because the trade-off you always have to understand with body armour, which a lot of people don't seem to grasp online, is that yes, you can keep making armour better and better, but it also gets heavier and bulkier. Once it gets too heavy and bulky, soldiers won't want to wear it, and it will actually cut down their combat effectiveness, because while they are better protected from sort of rifle fire and things like that, and shrapnel and explosives, it will only do so much. Humans will always be killed, by stuff that's just big enough to get them anyway. And just, the physics of certain things hitting the armour, even if it stops the round that's hitting it. But if it gets too heavy and, bulky, and also more expensive to produce, it's not actually effective for soldiers. So you sometimes see strange reports where somebody will say, a soldier was killed, while wearing an ECBA. If he had the Osprey vest on, he'd have been alright. And then you read that he was hit by an RPG. No, an Osprey vest isn't going to stop an RPG-7, an anti-tank round. That should be fairly obvious. But anyway, that gives you some idea at least. So if you imagine something that came between this and this, they don't look too dissimilar. The sort of Mark II vest from the ECBA. Essentially, it just looked like that kind of same style of green vest, but more cut to the shape of that. So anyway, let's take a proper look at the ECBA now. Right, so here's the ECBA, so let me open it up and show you the features of it. So basically, to do up, it's got a Velcro system and a button at the top, or a popper, whatever you want to call it. So your Kevlar liner sits in here, and how the Kevlar liner works, look, you can see the zip at the top. It's basically a one-piece Kevlar thing, a bit like the old ballistic nylons were shaped, where the armour actually goes over this bit, over the shoulder, and then down here. So it's all one piece of armour basically, it's not three separate panels, it's not like you've got one at the back and one for each side. And lots of modern body armour is obviously basically two identical pieces of Kevlar, one at the front, one at the back. With these they basically did, like half of it's on one side, half of it's on that side kind of approach. I don't know if there's pros and cons to doing it that way, but it would work at least. So basically you've got your soft body armour all the way through there. Basically this is just the material that holds it in. If you want me to show you, I will just open this up a bit. I'm not going to take it all out because it can be in a right pain to get these back in, but there you go, you can see that that's there, and there's the label for it, filler body armour, NATO stock numbers and all that. But yeah, so basically that's the soft body armour, this green stuff inside, that's your Kevlar basically. I think under Freedom of Information stuff they never actually released what it's equivalent to in the USNIJ level system, but from what I could gather, people estimate this is between a level 2 and a 3A. So again, it's going to protect you from most handgun rounds and shrapnel to an extent like that. Again, I'm sure if you wanted to, when better Kevlar systems come out, you could upgrade this, and I have actually upgraded this, which I'll show you in a minute. However, the main thing that made this obviously military style body armour was these. There's one on the front, one on the back. The bits for the plate carriers. Now these are small plates, so basically, I'll just show you one because they're identical on both sides. This vest contains two of these, the hard plates, and these are supposedly rated up to 7.62 by 39mm, the AK-47 AKM round. So obviously it should stop 5.56 and 5.45 rounds as well. But basically the idea is that your heart and a bit of your lungs are covered by one of these big hard plates, and that's obviously, the protection. Now this is where some people don't like the ECBA because they say the plates aren't big enough. But again, we go back to that thing of how big do you really want the plates to be. The modern Osprey and Virtus systems, or whatever they call them, the idea is that the hard plate is basically the same size, if I turn it round, of the entire front or back of the armour. So if you see, the size of this back bit, the hard plate is literally this exact same size. The issue is that then you end up going to quite a lot of weight per plate. I think people have said it's just over 4 kilos a plate. So your plates weigh 8 kilos as opposed to, maybe 1 or 2 kilos in this vest. So that's a lot more weight, and for obvious reasons. This is where you run into problems of soldiers not wanting to wear the armour, soldiers not doing the armour up properly, and all this sort of stuff that you actually can read about. That happens quite often. So I have upgraded this, as I've said, very basically. All I've done is, I'll show you now, if I open this up, on each side of this, in the bit that goes over the front, I have folded in half these are for the Osprey Armor, the stuff that replaced this in frontline use and is now getting replaced again. with these things, which are for the brassards, or whatever they call them, which is basically the shoulder armour, like that, if that's in frame well enough. It would have a cover on it on the thing, but basically that's just to protect this bit of your shoulder from shrapnel or whatever. So this is Kevlar 3A. So what I've done is I've folded it in half, which in theory I guess means it's even better armour rating. And then I've just poked it down here inside like that, and it seems to hold in pretty well, and there's space to do it. So you just get a bit of additional ballistic protection. Again, it's still not going to stop a proper rifle round, but it means in this area of the vest you've still got a little bit extra, you know, ballistic protection, which is obviously a nice thing to have. So I've done the exact same thing on this other side, but yeah. So I'll just put the vest on to show it you. As I said, it's actually quite comfortable, this, and those two soft panels I've added in don't really increase the weight of this at all. So what you do with this is open up that bit. This is the same as the Northern Ireland vest, how this does that, other than the fact this has a popper on as well. So you pull that in there, get that all like that, then pop that on, there we go, push that in even more now. So that's like that, and then you've got Velcro on the sides, so you can tighten it like that, and then it does a pretty good conforming fit to your body. So as said, this is actually pretty nice lightweight armour in terms of, you know, military armour. Because as I said, there's stuff that offers better protection than this now, but it's a hell of a lot heavier. So what I'm just going to quickly do before I wrap up this video is show you my Osprey Armor again that's replaced this. Now I don't actually have the big hard plate in the Osprey and I won't bother getting it down. But I'll give you an idea of why a lot of soldiers on forums and things still say they preferred this armour. Mostly for the whole thing of it's lightweight and you can move around in it easily, so it's not a pain in the ass to have this armour on you. When you see the Osprey system, especially if you bear in mind that if you have all the additional bits on it, you have like the brassards and you have the neck collars and everything, it starts to look more like that Northern Ireland armour. So you go back into the issue of armour that restricts movement too much and is too heavy. So again, if you're on the front line, I can understand why they think those sort of armours may be better. There's, you know, a good argument for both ways. And on the front lines, why, you know, some soldiers would actually prefer something like this because it's a lot more mobile and comfortable. It doesn't run your energy down as much, and you've still got a hard plate over your vital organs, basically, because if you see where this is positioned, that's definitely going to cover one lung and your heart. Whether or not it would cover all of that lung, probably not, but, you know, you could probably even get a compromise armour system, I imagine, if any nations have done them, where you have a hard plate basically completely over that area. But remember, you're never going to get totally good armour. I was reading where some people were saying that, you know, there was armour soldiers were issued with somewhere on a peacekeeping mission that was supposedly good enough to resist 50 BMG, but they were saying, you know, the problem was the armour weighed nearly 30 pounds, so I guess 12 kg or something like that. Lots of the soldiers ended up taking the plates out of the armour because, you know, oh, it's too heavy, so again, it wouldn't offer them the protection. And, you know, the problem is they said their legs and arms were still unprotected in their head other than, you know, a helmet. So they were saying somebody could just literally shoot them in the legs, or if a bomb went off, you know, their legs or their arms would still get shredded, and, you know, their head might still get taken off, but I guess their torso's still intact. So, you know, that gives you the idea of, you know, they're simply just saying put more plates in armour, put more Kevlar on it, doesn't necessarily fix anything. I've also, for this, now I know this one actually fits me quite well, I've got a cover coming for this in MTP and another coming in 95 Woodland. Because that was the 3 types of camo cover they did for this, because this has been in British military service since, I guess, sometime in the 90s, and it's only just being phased out now, apparently, because it gives you an idea, even though they were using them for training and rear echelon troops more and more in the later years, it does give you an idea that, you know, this was still good enough armour that it stayed around that long, because basically, you know, there were certain roles it would fit into better than the other armours. Anyway, before I finish this video, I'll quickly show you the Osprey, just so you can get an idea of how much bulkier and heavier that is. And I'll also say I won this on an auction on eBay, so for those of you that keep asking me the price of it, this came with the cover, the Kevlar filler, and the front and back hard plate. The Osprey bits that are there I've added myself. They were like 18 quid, I think, so £9 a plate, or £9 panel, but yeah. So yeah, with the postage on this and everything, it was just around £50, so that's not bad at all for that. So yeah, let me show you the Osprey stuff, just with me standing next to it, so you can get an idea of the size and scale of each of them. Okay, so here's the Osprey Mark IV armour. I've put a chopping board in the front to simulate having a plate in there, but I haven't actually bought the plates this yet because I've not seen any for a reasonable price, and I said I don't have any real use for them. But if I just get this down to give you an idea of the scale, weight-wise and everything, this is already, just with the soft armour in, a couple of pouches and everything, and one plate in the front, not even a plate in the back, and this chopping board definitely wouldn't be as heavy as a proper plate that, you know, fits it. Yes, the plates would be bigger in this than this. I should tell you what, let me just move the camera a bit further back so you can hopefully tilt that down a bit. Hopefully just so you can see me a bit better. But yeah, to give you an idea, yes, this is bigger, and it has all the add-on bits that increase the weight and the bulk further, but obviously give you more protection. But it's quite obvious to me why lots of soldiers did prefer the ECBA, because if you look at both of these systems, obviously the ECBA is much lighter. And bear in mind, with an armour system like this, you know, there's nothing in theory stopping, if like I was saying earlier, if a nation still wanted to build armour like this, putting, you know, the very best current sort of generation Kevlar fillers in them as the soft body armour, you know, slightly bigger or, you know, more resistant plates in it. And again, you'd have something that probably didn't weigh all that much more, but would still offer very good protection. Yes, you don't get all the protection around your armpits and stuff like that this sort of armour would offer you, but the thing is, as said, lots of soldiers, when I've been looking on forums about this, still end up preferring stuff like the ECBA, simply because it's actually lightweight, where, you know, as said, you wouldn't have any issue wearing this for a while. Where something like that, I can certainly understand if you had that with lots and lots of gear you had to carry as well, why, you know, the ECBA is more popular. So as I said, I assume that there's not much information about them online. These came into military service probably around the 90s. You know, they had the Woodland 95 covers, so I can't imagine them being prior to 1995 for the DPM covers. So yeah, probably mid-90s these came into service. Only now sort of leaving service from what I can understand, because they certainly serve a purpose. Yes, they've been replaced on the front lines mostly with armour like that, and then that's getting replaced anyway now, but you know, this is what it is, and I can certainly understand why these are popular. The troops, oh actually, as well as the free covers that the British Army use for them, you know, the Woodland camo, the desert camo like this one, and the DPM, not the DPM, sorry, the MTP, that camo. They also actually have these with a blue UN Peacekeeper cover, which is apparently for journalists to wear, or UN Peacekeepers, so it's actually, you know, you can have all that same body armour protection, but it's meant to indicate you're not actually a soldier, or, you know, you're an observer kind of thing, not a soldier. So yeah. But yeah, the MTP is pretty damn good, and as said, quite cheaply and easily, you can add a bit more Kevlar to the front if you wanted to. You know, and bulk it up more. Well, actually, there's room in the liner that you can add more Kevlar to the back if you wanted to, in all honesty. So yeah, these are pretty damn good bits of kit, I'd say, in my opinion. As I said, I'm not a soldier, I've never done any military service or anything like that, because I was unfit to serve when I was sort of interested in doing it, for medical reasons, but, yeah. Actually, I will say, I did read that, as well as the Mark 6 and Mark 7 helmets that Britain sold to Ukraine, apparently shitloads of these were bought by the Ukrainian army, or people, you know, buying them for themselves, essentially, if the army wasn't buying it for them, in Ukraine as well, because apparently in the Ukrainian Civil War, or Ukrainian War against Russia, whatever you want to call it, these armour, bits of armour, were apparently very popular with the troops. And I can understand why, because as I said, it gives you a lot of good mobility. The problem is with a lot of these armours, is when you start going to something this bulky and heavy, I know, like this obviously is an old, obsolete design, but just to give you an idea of scale, because you could very easily imagine that as the plate carrier, yeah, something like this, in some ways, you could run around faster and have a smaller profile, so, you know, I can understand definitely the appeal of why just simply throwing more protection on with some of these armours isn't always the best choice. But there you go, that's my uninformed opinion of it. Read up stuff yourself, but as I said, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it seems to be quite hard to find out a lot of information about the ECBA. It's very easy to find out information on all the Osprey kits and that, but there's no Wikipedia pages or anything dedicated to this, and generally you can't find too many threads on the ECBA other than people saying, why is it still in service, or which one's the best out of the armours, and people arguing about it. Not actual proper, you know, Wikipedia style pages or pages which show you a timeline of the armours, but there you go, enough rambling.